Kris Knoblauch has left the Hartford Wolf Pack to become the new head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. We break down his tenure in Hartford, and what do we know about the new head coach of the Hartford Wolf Pack, Steve Smith? All this and more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 939 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's go ahead and dive into this news that, again, Kris Knoblauch has left the Hartford Wolf Pack to accept a job as the new head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. I think congratulations are certainly in store for Kris Knoblauch, landing his first head coaching gig at the age of 45. It seems a little bit on the young side as far as when you get your first crack at being an NHL head coach, but regardless, I think it's well-deserved. Somebody who seems to be highly thought of in the NHL world and somebody who I think slowly but surely has built the Hartford Wolf Pack back up into a contending team. They had that nice run in the playoffs last year. And, we're off to a good start this year under Knoblauch's guidance. But as for Knoblauch going to Edmonton, he replaces Jay Woodcroft. He was in his third year as the head coach was Woodcroft. The Oilers were off to a 3-9-1 start to the season, and that was the end of the line. Obviously, expectations are high there, and the Oilers were not living up to them. They had lost 4 in a row before they beat Seattle on Saturday, but apparently that was too little, too late as far as Woodcroft saving his job. And Kris Knoblauch, these things, they can happen pretty quick and move pretty fast, and obviously it all came together very quickly here. Woodcroft out and Kris Knoblauch in as the new head coach of the Oilers. But as far as Knoblauch goes, we'll kind of go through his tenure, kind of pay our respects to him and acknowledge, some of his achievements with the Hartford Wolf Pack. We're also going to look back on that 6-game stretch that he spent as the acting Ranger head coach a few years back. But as far as the journey that he's taken to get here, he's basically done what just about every NHL head coach has done. They climb the coaching ranks. They go from one level to the next. He started all the way back in 2006, 2007 as an assistant coach with the Prince Albert Raiders of the WHL. He was then the assistant coach for the WHL's Kootenay Ice. I hope I'm saying that right. Kootenay Ice for 3 years there. Then he was the head coach of the Ice for 2 years, won a championship there, spent 5 years with the Erie Otters of the OHL, won a championship there, and actually spent 3 years coaching Connor McDavid on the Erie Otters way back in the day there, where obviously Connor McDavid and, for that matter, Kris Knoblauch just kind of getting their start. But we'll discuss that aspect in greater detail a little bit later. But that brings us to basically current day, the past 5 seasons or parts of the last 5 seasons when Kris Knoblauch has been the head coach of the Hartford Wolf Pack. The first 2 seasons that he spent there were no Calder playoffs because of COVID. The 1 year, it basically just canceled the rest of the season. And then the second year, there were no playoffs scheduled. That was the year where the Rangers, the Wolf Pack only played, I believe, the Bruins and the Sound Tigers, now known as the Islanders. Bridgeport and Providence, those were their only 2 opponents the entire season because, due to COVID and travel kind of being restricted and, these teams wanting to be responsible and everything, that's how they had to roll. There were only 3 teams participating in the season that year in that division. So the Rangers just kept playing the same 2. I did it again. The Wolf Pack just kept playing the same 2 teams over and over again. And, that was it. It was a bizarre season, but at least they got to play some hockey. And then as far as the last couple of seasons here, the Wolf Pack missed the playoffs in Knoblauch's 3rd season. But then last year got to the 3rd round of the playoffs before being eliminated They took out 2 teams in the best of 3 opening round, and then you get to the round of 16. They won a best of 5 there, and then unfortunately got swept in the following best of 5 the next season. But, I certainly don't begrudge Knoblauch for taking this job. I know it's the middle of the season. The timing isn't exactly perfect because obviously the new campaign is underway, and he's, down there in the weeds with his players with the Hartford Wolf Pack. But when an opportunity like this comes knocking, you got to jump at it. And I don't think I haven't seen anybody say anything bad about Knoblauch, like, oh, how could you lose? How could you leave the Wolf Pack to go coach the Oilers? I think for the most part, for the Ranger fans, the vast majority of them certainly understanding and in most cases happy for Kris Knoblauch taking this job. I think maybe the only Ranger fans that aren't happy about this are the ones that maybe wanted Knoblauch to be the next head coach of the Rangers. Obviously, Gerard Gallant and the Rangers, they quote unquote part ways this past off season. Excuse me. And so that obviously opened up the door for Knoblauch to potentially be the next head coach of the Rangers. The Rangers go with Laviolette. I think most Ranger fans that wanted Knoblauch, though, have probably, been a little bit more at ease given the fantastic start that the Rangers are off to under Peter Laviolette. But if the Rangers were scuffling right now, there'd be a lot of Ranger fans really, really upset about this, that, oh, Knoblauch should have been the guy, and they went with a retread, and now it's coming back to bite them. But the fact that the Rangers are doing awesome right now, I think that takes off some of the edge as far as the Ranger fans that wanted Knoblauch to be the next head coach of the Rangers. But as far as, his total track record with the Wolfpack, Knoblauch went 119, 90, and 32. The Pack was off to a 7-3-1 start under Knoblauch this season. And then on Sunday night, they actually lost in overtime to Providence in the first game that Steve Smith spent as their new head coach. And we're going to talk about Smith a little bit later in today's episode. So the Pack now 7-3-2. But yeah, Knoblauch, he was definitely in the running as far as, being the next head coach of the New York Rangers. I don't know that he was ever really the favorite. Toward the end, we were hearing Laviolette or Hines or Laviolette. And at that point, I think a lot of Ranger fans got a little bit more on board with the idea of it being Peter Laviolette. But I think Knoblauch was certainly at least under consideration. My understanding is he did interview for the position. And again, I know a lot of Ranger fans were looking for that. They wanted the team to take a chance, go in a bold new direction. Maybe you look at some of the success that Jared Bednar has had. He didn't have a lot of experience. He wins the cup with the Avalanche. John Cooper, another good example there. Didn't have a ton of experience. Won 2 cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But again, once Laviolette was named the new head coach of the Rangers, I can remember coming on here and talking about the ripple effect and is Laviolette the right choice and this and that. But one ripple effect that I mentioned was Kris Knoblauch. At the time, once I found out it was going to be Laviolette, it was not going to be Knoblauch. Knoblauch was going to be back with the Wolfpack. But I said right then and there, I don't think that Kris Knoblauch is going to make it through another offseason still as the head coach of the Wolfpack. And not because I think he would do a bad job or anything like that, but because I just feel like eventually he's going to get a chance to be a head coach in the NHL. And as it turns out, we didn't even make it that far. We didn't make it anywhere near next offseason. Really, I believe the first in-season firing was the Oilers and, their coach. So now all it took was one opening. As soon as that happened, Kris Knoblauch's on his way to be the new head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. And, it's interesting because I didn't really remember seeing any reports about Knoblauch interviewing with other teams this past NHL offseason. But from what I understand, again, he is very well respected, very highly thought of, and he's got his chance now. And again, good for him. Another piece of good news here about this is that Knoblauch goes to the Western Conference. He's not going to a Ranger division rival. We don't have to worry about him meeting up with the Rangers in the playoffs and knowing every player's strength and weakness and everything like that. I mean, unless they meet in the finals, but at that point, that's a good problem to have. But he goes to the Western Conference, so we're not going to be seeing him that often. And in fact, the Rangers already played the Oilers once this season, and they beat them. So only going to play them one more time this season, and that'll be that. So all the best to Kris Knoblauch. Again, somebody that I think did a nice job as the head coach of the Hartford Wolf Pack. I want to, in just a second, turn our attention to some of the success stories that have come out of Hartford during Kris Knoblauch's tenure there. There are a few of them and a couple of guys that are currently making big impacts on the New York Rangers. So we'll get to that. Also want to kind of just go down memory lane and remember that 6-game stretch a few years back where he was actually the acting head coach. We'll talk about that too. And we're also going to talk about Steve Smith and what he brings to the table and what his NHL journey, or hockey journey rather, has encompassed so far throughout his tenure in coaching. So we'll get to all that fun stuff in just a second here. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Jace Medical. We spend a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits. I'm very thankful for that connection that we have. And today, I want our chat to be a little more personal. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code Locked On at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I am thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year supply. I also ordered an antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. So, if you or someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your purchase. Once again, use the promo code Locked On for $20 off of your purchase. All right, we just want to go ahead and thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And for the everydayers, definitely come back for our next one. We had Henrik Lundqvist taking his rightful place in the Hall of Fame last night. He delivered really a beautiful speech, upon his induction there, and just a really nice ceremony. So got to talk a little bit about Henrik Lundqvist and his career. I mean, that's always a challenge, trying to sum up Henrik Lundqvist and what he's meant for the Rangers in just one episode, but we're going to do our best and focus mainly on the night itself. Once again, him taking his rightful place in the Hall of Fame. But for the time being, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Knoblauch and some of the positive impacts that he made on the Rangers. Because, again, I'm very thankful for his time here. I think, obviously, the NHL and the AHL, they can kind of operate independently of each other, but I think it's also good to have both teams kind of in lockstep. And, you don't want a player in the AHL doing something radically different than the NHL team is going to want them to do. And a lot of guys, when they've been called up, have been ready to go under Knoblauch's, supervision there. Now, I think as far as players that were on the Wolf Pack while Knoblauch was the coach that came to the Rangers and made a positive impact, we have to start with Igor Shesterkin. Now, obviously, Igor was not there for very long. He was never going to be there for very long. That was just him getting used to pro hockey and making that transition from the KHL to the NHL instead of just going from one to the other. Obviously, he spent some time with the Wolf Pack, but Igor absolutely dominated, went 17-4-3 with a 1.9 goals against average and a .934 save percentage. That was during 2019-2020, which was Knoblauch's first year there. Now, I will admit, I feel like pretty much any coach with Igor Shesterkin, that's going to work out pretty well in your favor. And what a nice situation for Knoblauch to be in. His first year as coach of the Wolf Pack, and he's got a goalie that is ticketed for big-time success in the NHL. He's only going to be with the Wolf Pack for a short amount of time. Really, he just spent that one half of a season there. But regardless, Igor Shesterkin, you have to call him a success story under Kris Knoblauch. Another example, I think, is Ryan Lindgren. He spent parts of 3 seasons with the Wolf Pack, so he's obviously there quite a bit longer than Igor Shesterkin. Now, Knoblauch, again, he only had him for 9 games. That was in 2019-2020, but nevertheless, Lindgren has obviously worked out nicely, so a little bit of overlap there between Knoblauch and Lindgren. A recent very good example, I think, is Will Cuylle. Cuylle really throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, even so far in the regular season, looks NHL ready. Now, I realize he's being robbed of goals by these reviews left and right. He should have 2 more goals than he does, but obviously a physical player and just somebody that looks like he belongs. The game's not moving too fast for him. He's ready to go. And I would not be surprised if Will Cuylle, like I said, is on the Rangers for good, never plays another AHL game in his career. But Will Cuylle, under Knoblauch, the past year that he spent there, had 25 goals and 20 assists in 69 games. Once again, with the Wolf Pack under Knoblauch's direction. He also played 18 games with the Wolf Pack the year before. And in that season, he had 2 goals and 3 assists. So a really rapid improvement from Will Cuylle from one year to the next with the Hartford Wolf Pack. And once again, doing that under the direction of Kris Knoblauch. I think you've also got to look at Braden Schneider. Now, Schneider only played 2 games with the Pack in 2020, 2021, but then in 2021, 2022, played 24 games with the Wolf Pack. He had no goals and 9 assists in those games. He was caught up by the Rangers and, again, never looked back. And I know, Schneider's had a couple of hiccups this season. Some Ranger fans have gotten on him. But overall, I think this guy's a really solid defenseman. He's still very young and one of those guys that, again, once he was called up, he just looked NHL ready. I remember, they traded for, who was the defenseman they traded for that year? I think it was Braun. Yes, Braun. And at first, they were going to go with a third pairing of Braun and Nemeth. And I'm thinking, like, dude, like, Schneider's better than both of them. Like make sure he's out there. And, eventually Patrick Nemeth was the odd man out there. But again, Braden Schneider, another guy coached by Kris Knoblauch, was called up to the Rangers, and he was ready to go and ready to play some hockey. And again, it's not been perfect all the time, but I think this guy overall is a solid defenseman, and he's only going to get better and better as time goes on here. And then I think you can also even look at Filipino. Again, short overlap with Knoblauch. It was only 9 games back in 2019, 2020. But this is a unique situation because Filipino had already been in the NHL. He'd already been with the Rangers. He'd already had, some success, but was not playing well for the Rangers at the start of that season. So they sent him down to the Wolf Pack to get him back on track. And when that happened, again, he only played 9 games there with Knoblauch and with the Wolf Pack, but he had 3 goals and 6 assists. He was then called back up to the Rangers, and at that point, never looked back. He was with the Rangers for good. And again, it was something of a surprise when the Rangers sent him down, but obviously under Knoblauch and the rest of the coaching staff there, they got him back on track. And again, he's been back with the Rangers and been an important part of this team ever since. I think a lot of Ranger fans will certainly also remember, this is probably like the most visible that Knoblauch has been for Ranger fans, that short run that he had with the Rangers as the head coach back in 2020, 2021. And for anybody that needs a refresher, it was a long time ago, sort of. And there's a lot going on that season, that's for sure. COVID, certainly among all the different things that were happening with the Rangers. Basically, David Quinn, the entire Ranger coaching staff, they got COVID. They had to go into protocol. So the Rangers were forced to go with just a completely makeshift coaching staff, which involved Knoblauch being the head coach. Chris Drury was one of the assistant coaches. And I want to say, I'm pretty sure it was Gordon Murphy that was the other assistant coach on the bench for the Rangers during that time. And in 6 games, look, small sample size. This isn't going to tell you everything. But the Rangers, a team that at the time, they didn't end up making the playoffs this year. And this turned out to be the final season of David Quinn's tenure there. But when the Rangers had Knoblauch as their coach, they went 4-2 for whatever that might be worth to anybody. And the most notable moment of that whole tenure, I feel like, has to be his first game there. Now, this is probably a coincidence that it just happened to be Knoblauch's first game, but the first game that Kris Knoblauch spent as a head coach in the NHL, his team, the Rangers, beat the Philadelphia Flyers, squeaked by them 9-0. It was actually 9-0 going into the third period of that game. And then I think the Rangers not wanting to run it up and probably preserve the shutout for, I think Georgiev was actually the starting goalie for that game, but just went into defensive mode in the third period and basically just ran the clock out. But yeah, 9-0 win in Knoblauch's NHL debut. I'm sure he'll never forget that. It's interesting though, because technically that 4-2 record that Knoblauch had with the Rangers, that doesn't count. I mean, we all witnessed it. We all saw it. But technically, it's a technicality where because Knoblauch was the acting coach and not the interim coach, subbing in for a head coach that was still there, David Quinn, those wins and losses don't go on his record. They actually go on David Quinn's record, even though Quinn was watching it from his living room like all the rest of us were. But it is what it is. It was still cool to see Knoblauch get his chance. And obviously, it went pretty well for the 6 games that he was here. I also talked about, as far as him coaching the Oilers, the familiarity with Connor McDavid. Again, he coached McDavid with the Erie Otters for 3 seasons. I probably don't have to tell you guys that McDavid put up otherworldly numbers in the OHL. His last year there, he had 120 points in 47 games. And again, he would have put up, it's kind of the same thing with Igor Shesterkin. He would have been a fantastic player at that time, regardless of who the coach was. But McDavid is said to be very high on Kris Knoblauch. Apparently, he's a big fan of him. And you have to wonder, did McDavid have some influence here? When they knew that a coaching change was going to be made, and they knew, we got to make our superstar happy. We got to put him in the best position to succeed and ultimately deliver a cup because, that's their goal. We got to get his input. And I have to wonder, McDavid had to have played at least something of a role in Kris Knoblauch being the new head coach. You would have to think they at least got his opinion there. So interesting situation and a nice landing spot. It's a team that has not gotten over the hump lately, but I think for Knoblauch, it's a good place to be. You've got talented players like McDavid and Draisaitl and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at your disposal here. The fan base expects results. I'm sure they're very restless right now, but they're probably also very excited to have a new coach at the helm and hopefully get this team pointed in the right direction. And the Oilers are now 1-0 in the Knoblauch era because just last night they beat the Islanders 4-1 in Edmonton. So Kris Knoblauch and the Oilers are already doing us a favor there and knocking off the Islanders in regulation. So no points for the Islanders in that game. just a second, we want to go ahead and shift our attention to Steve Smith. He's going to be the new head coach of the Hartford Wolf Pack. We'll get to that in just a second and just kind of talk about everything we know about him and how it might go with him leading the way. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than right now to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more. And I actually have a friend, I've mentioned this a couple of times, but he's a big New York Giants fan, and I'm sure we got some Giants fans listening to this. To say the least, not having an ideal season so far, and I don't really think it's going to change. But what my friend will do, he's been doing this for years, he actually bets against the Giants because his logic is that something cool has to happen. Either his football team wins a game or they lose and he wins money. So just an idea to toss out there for you guys. But once again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so now that we've pretty much said our goodbyes to Kris Knoblauch, who's going to head to the Edmonton Oilers, or actually has already headed to the Edmonton Oilers and is 1-0 as an NHL head coach officially, let's go ahead and turn our attention to Steve Smith, the new coach of the Hartford Wolf Pack at 60 years old. Smith had been an assistant coach with the Wolf Pack in all of the past 3 seasons, including this one that was just underway here. He was actually, so I mentioned earlier, how Knoblauch became the acting head coach for the Rangers when the whole coaching staff was in COVID protocol. Another effect from that is that Smith actually became the acting head coach for the Wolfpack for just 2 games when that happened. So again, that's when David Quinn and the Ranger coaches were all in protocol, but Knoblauch couldn't coach both teams at the same time. So Steve Smith stepped in there for 2 games. Smith has also been an assistant coach with the Calgary Flames from 1997 and 98, the Oilers from 2010 to 2014, Carolina Hurricanes from 2014 to 2018, and the Sabres from 2018 to 2021. So obviously, he's had a lot of different tenures as a coach and assistant coach in the NHL. As a player, played in 804 games with the Oilers, the Blackhawks, and the Flames. He was a defenseman. He was drafted number 111 overall all the way back in 1981 by the Oilers. And in those 804 games, scored 72 goals, had 303 assists, also played another 134 playoff games, 11 goals, and 41 assists in those games. And he was a pretty important member of the Oilers dynasty. It's easy to just think of, Gretzky and Messier leading the way, but he was a key defenseman on that team, won 3 Stanley Cups with them in 1987, 1988, and 1990. And I found this interesting. He actually retired in 1997 and did not play in the 97-98 season, but then he came back the following year, played 3 more seasons with the Calgary Flames, and then retired as a player in 2000. And like we said, same thing with Knoblauch. He's Smith has kind of bounced around a little bit and had different tenures with different teams and varying degrees of success, but he now becomes the 8th head coach in Hartford Wolfpack history. And it also sounds like this is the first time that he's a head coach at any level of pro hockey. He's always been an assistant with the Wolfpack and all those teams I just mentioned in the NHL. So, the ultimate goal for a lot of these guys, and we kind of went over this with Kris Knoblauch, and the reason why nobody can begrudge him from going from the Wolfpack to the Edmonton Oilers is because all these guys eventually want to be a head coach in the NHL. And it's a credit to Steve Smith, technically now head coach of an AHL team in a roundabout way. You're one step away at this point. And again, as far as I could tell, this is his first time as a pro hockey league coach. And that being the case, obviously he's stuck with it. He's 60 years old now and it's bounced around quite a bit, as a lot of these coaches do. But he's got a chance now to, be a head coach. And as far as the expectations, you just hope that he can pick up right where Knoblauch left off. Obviously, he's been on the coaching staff the last couple of seasons. So I think it's nice that obviously there's some familiarity between him and the players, and even him in the city and the surroundings and everything. You're not bringing in somebody ice cold. You're going with somebody that is well known. And again, it's a really cool opportunity for him. And as far as how this is going to go, I have no idea. It's his first time as a head coach, but obviously you just hope that He keeps the Wolfpack going in the right direction. They've been a team that's steadily been improving the past couple of seasons. We talked about that fun little playoff run that they had this past season. And you hope that, obviously there continue to be success stories when it comes to players playing for the Wolfpack and then heading to the New York Rangers. We went through a few of them a little bit earlier. Obviously, the Rangers, they got some important players in the Wolfpack right now. Brian Hoffman is one of them. I would say Dylan Garand. I think at some point he has a chance to be the Ranger backup goalie. And Hoffman, I mean, he's going to be something for the Rangers. I think that eventually will happen. And even somebody like Adam Sikora, just getting started in his pro hockey career. He was a second-round pick by the Rangers a few years ago, and there's others too. But yeah, I mean, it's a very important job. These guys are one step away from the NHL, and it's on the AHL coaching staff to help them get to that next level. And obviously, we hope that Smith can do that with the Wolfpack. As far as the Wolfpack themselves, might as well do a quick update on them. So this is interesting. It's Tuesday as I'm recording this. The Wolfpack actually play tomorrow on Wednesday at 11 a.m. You heard that correctly. They play host to the Springfield Thunderbirds on Wednesday at 11 a.m. They are trying to snap a 2-game losing streak. The last loss that they had was in overtime. But yeah, that's the second game of Smith's tenure as the head coach of the Wolfpack. And interesting start time. Maybe that snaps them out of it a little bit. I mean, it's only a 2-game losing streak. It's not that big of a deal, but obviously, fingers crossed the Wolfpack can get him his first win on Wednesday morning, or I suppose it'll be the afternoon by the time the game ends. But be that as it may, might as well turn our attention to a couple of players on the Wolfpack now. Johnny Brodzinski continues to lead the way in terms of points. We saw him called up briefly to the Rangers this season, sent back down. He's got a team high 7 goals, 5 assists, and a team high 12 points. You've also got Alex Belzile, free agent pickup from the Montreal Canadiens. He's got 3 goals and 7 assists in 12 games. Defenseman Mac Hollowell. Now, that name might sound familiar because he's been called up and sent down no fewer than 70 times in the past week here. But yeah, it's paper transactions, obviously, but the Rangers keep calling him up and sending him down. But while with the Wolfpack this season, has a goal and 9 assists in 10 games. I kind of feel bad for Hollowell that he kept getting called up and sent back down. Never actually played in a game with the Rangers, but they've got some good defensemen, and there just wasn't any room or any real reason to force him into the lineup. But obviously, having a nice season there, and he may be near the top of the pecking order, if the Rangers, and hopefully they don't have injuries, but if they do, maybe Mac Hollowell is one of the first couple of guys from the AHL that you look to as a potential call-up. You've also got Riley Nash and Brett Berard. They each have 9 points. And then Brian Hoffman, I know people are very excited to hear about him. He has 2 goals, 5 assists in 12 games. He's also a -3 during that time. So he got off to a hot start. It's seemingly cooled off a little bit, but again, adjusting to pro hockey. And I think this is also, evidence as far as why you don't call him straight up to the NHL and you have him skip the AHL entirely. And I'm just going by points here. It's not like I've watched every single Hartford Wolfpack game. But he's got 7 points in 12 games. It's not bad, but you figure it'd probably be a little bit less than that with the Rangers. He'd be a little bit farther down the lineup. He'd also be probably getting less ice time. He wouldn't be getting nearly as much power play time. So it's good that they're letting Hoffman kind of do his thing there, hopefully build his confidence. And at some point this year, if he's ready to make that jump, the Rangers can make it happen. But that's where Hoffman is right now. Also, a little bit of a slow start for Adam Sikora, former second rounder. He has just 3 assists in 12 games, no goals. But this is basically his first taste of pro hockey after he played 2 games with the Wolfpack last season. But yeah, I mean, obviously, again, another example of somebody just needing to continue to develop and not rush them to the NHL or anything like that. I don't think anybody was calling for Adam Sikora to make the team this season, but obviously somebody that the Rangers have big plans for in the future. And as far as goalies, strong goaltending for the Wolfpack, you've got Garand. 7 games, he is 4-1-2 with a .230 goals against average, a .927 save percentage. He was awesome in the playoffs last year after struggling a little bit in the regular season, his first taste of pro hockey. But sounds like he's basically picked up where he left off last year as far as that strong playoff run that he had. And then you've also got, of course, Louis Domingue. 4 games, he's 3-1 with a .175 goals against average with the Pack, a .934 save percentage. So both goalies off to a fantastic start. And of course, Domingue had that one game with the Rangers where he played very well. And he was dressed for the last game too as Jonathan Quick's backup. But we'll see how that goes. I mean, honestly, they call these guys up and send them down so often. And it's obviously paper transactions done for the purpose of cap space accrual. But as I sit here right now, can I tell you if Domingue is technically on the Rangers or the Wolf Pack? No, I'd have to look it up because every day it seems like call it up, sent down, call it up, sent down. But it is what it is. It's what they have to do. And yeah, Domingue, when he's played for the Wolf Pack, has played very well for them. So that's kind of where things stand. Again, props to Kris Knoblauch for getting his first NHL head coaching job. It's something that was bound to happen sooner or later. It felt that way. And a huge congratulations to Steve Smith as well, becoming the new head coach of the Hartford Wolf Pack. But I figure we could pretty much call it there for today. Once again, if you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, at @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's at @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.